It was supposed to be flawless. The lights, the music, the shimmering runway. Everything timed down to the millisecond. But behind the curtain, Madison Beer was standing under 25 pounds of crystal-covered chaos. Her first set of angel wings wasn't just heavy. It was dangerous. Each time she spun during rehearsal, the massive wingspan sliced through the air like a blade. One wrong step, and she could have taken out an entire row of dancers. She tried to laugh it off at first. "They're gorgeous," she told the crew, trying to sound calm. But inside she was terrified. The wings pulled at her shoulders, the harness cutting into her back. Every move felt like she was carrying another person. At one point she joked, "I'm going to hit a dancer off the platform." But the truth was, she wasn't joking at all. Stage managers exchanged worried glances. Producers whispered about backup plans. Maybe the routine would need to be shortened, or worse, cancelled. Madison, ever the perfectionist, refused to quit. She'd dreamed of this show since she was a kid watching it from her couch. But dreams look different when they weigh 25 pounds. It was a battle between beauty and survival. The image of perfection versus the reality of gravity. Every performer hits that moment where the fantasy collides with what the body can handle. For Madison, that collision came right there, in the middle of rehearsal, with everyone watching and the clock ticking. By midnight, there was only one question left. Would she perform at all, or would Victoria's Secret risk everything to fix the unfixable? By midnight, the Victoria's Secret design floor looked less like a studio and more like an emergency room. A dozen designers huddled around a long white table, caffeine-fueled and wide-eyed, with sketches spread out like blueprints for survival. The problem wasn't small. It was feathered, jeweled, and 25 pounds heavy. Madison Beer's dream wings had turned into a backstage nightmare. Someone grabbed a glue gun. Another dumped a tray of Swarovski crystals onto velvet. The clock was merciless. 24 hours until showtime. They stripped the old design down to its bones. Frame, wire, silk, weighing every piece, searching for balance between fantasy and flight. Each hour that passed blurred into the next, the sound of shears slicing fabric echoing like a heartbeat. Feathers were hand-dyed in champagne hues under harsh fluorescent lights. Someone whispered, 5 pounds. That's all she can handle. And just like that, the mission changed. From grandeur to grace, from spectacle to survival. They cut, glued, and stitched until the first hints of morning seeped through the blinds. When Madison walked in at sunrise, the room went silent. In the corner stood her new wings, lighter, smaller, shimmering with a kind of defiant beauty. They weren't meant to dominate the stage. They were meant to free her on it. She smiled, that soft kind of disbelief that comes when something goes wrong and somehow ends up more right than before. She slipped them on, spun once, twice. No strain, no fear, just movement, just music. And in that moment, the exhaustion on the designers' faces turned into pride. But that last-minute rescue did more than save her performance. It changed her legacy. When the music finally hit and the lights poured down on her, Madison Beer wasn't just performing. She was living inside a dream that had once felt impossible. Later, she'd describe it as so surreal and crazy. But in that moment, there weren't words big enough to hold what she felt. Every note, every breath, every heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the runway. For years, she'd been the girl watching from the audience, eyes wide, whispering to herself, "I'd give anything just to be a tree prop in that show." And now, there she was, not in the shadows, not part of the scenery, but in the spotlight, commanding it. That's the quiet kind of full-circle moment that can undo you. All the hours spent rehearsing, all the doubt that comes with chasing something glittering and far away. Suddenly, it's real. And Madison knew it. You could see it in the way she smiled during her set, how her shoulders loosened when the crowd roared back. It wasn't just a performance anymore. It was proof that the girl who once dreamed from the sidelines had earned her wings, literally and figuratively. Backstage afterward, she laughed through tears, still in her bedazzled pink look, still shaking from the adrenaline. "It was so surreal," she kept saying, almost as if repeating it might help her believe it. She wasn't just headlining a show. She was part of a legacy, part of the mythology that had inspired her since childhood. And what she said about keeping those wings shows just how personal it all was. When the cameras stopped flashing and the runway went dark, Madison was still glowing. But there was one thing she couldn't take with her. The wings. The same delicate 5-pound masterpiece that had carried her through her biggest performance were whisked away by the Victoria's Secret team, sealed off for their archives like a piece of history. "Now I'm forever a part of the Victoria's Secret Angel Week archive," she said with a laugh that didn't quite hide the emotion underneath. But she did get to keep something. Her pink, crystal-studded outfit, that pastel armor that caught the light just right, and turned her into a vision of modern glamour. She plans to frame it, literally. "I'm going to put it in a box in glass and light it up in my house," she said, the words half joke, half promise. It wasn't vanity, it was preservation. For one night, that look represented everything she'd worked for. The music, the fear, the miracle fix at dawn. Keeping it meant freezing that feeling in time. There's something poetic about that image. An artist placing her costume behind glass, not as a relic of fame, but as proof of survival. The wings may belong to the brand, but the moment belongs to her. In a world where angels are often chosen, designed, and displayed, Madison's story flipped the script. She didn't just wear the wings, she earned them. She turned an emblem of perfection into something human, messy, and real. And in doing so, she reclaimed what it means to be an angel. Not flawless, but fearless. For years, the weight of Victoria's Secret wings was more than symbolic. It was literal. Backstage stories of supermodels balancing 30, 40, even 50 pounds of feathers became part of the show's mythology. Alessandra Ambrosio once carried a 30-pound pair while secretly 6 weeks pregnant. Bella Hadid shouldered a staggering 50-pound masterpiece that shimmered under the lights, but left her bruised by the end of the night. Each woman, each set of wings, became a story about strength disguised as glamour. Then came Madison Beer, a performer, not a runway veteran, stepping into that same legacy. But her wings were different. Lighter, softer, built for movement, not endurance. They didn't tower over her like armor. They moved with her like air. It wasn't a downgrade. It was evolution. The 5-pound wings weren't just a design choice. They were a message. The Victoria's Secret woman no longer needed to suffer for beauty. She could breathe. She could dance. She could perform. Even Heidi Klum, one of the brand's original icons, used to beg for the biggest wings. "I don't want little chicken wings," she once said. "I want the biggest wings you could possibly have." That era thrived on spectacle. Bigger, shinier, heavier. But Madison's moment hinted at something else entirely. A shift from impossible perfection to achievable magic. From dominating the stage to belonging on it. In that sense, her wings were a metaphor for the brand itself. Lighter, freer, redesigned for the future. But what Madison's story really reveals goes beyond fabric and feathers. At its core, Madison's story isn't just about a pair of wings. It's about what happens when creativity bends instead of breaks. The night before the biggest performance of her life, everything could have fallen apart. But instead, the team adapted, and so did she. That's the quiet resilience people don't see. Not the perfect pose on stage, but the sleepless compromise that makes it possible. In a way, her performance became a reflection of what Victoria's Secret itself is trying to become. Lighter, more inclusive, more human. The old image of perfection is gone, replaced by something that breathes. Madison wasn't cast for being an impossible standard. She was chosen for her voice, her energy, her individuality. She wasn't walking a runway as a mannequin. She was performing as herself. That's what made the moment different. It wasn't about fantasy anymore. It was about evolution. You could feel it in the audience, too. The applause wasn't just for the outfit, or the song, or even the wings. It was for the fact that the moment felt alive. For the first time in a long time, the show didn't seem to be worshiping perfection. It was celebrating presence. And maybe that's the real legacy of those last-minute wings. They weren't the biggest, the brightest, or the heaviest. But they represented something deeper. The courage to start again, to redefine beauty without losing the magic. Maybe the lightest wings carried the heaviest meaning. It's almost poetic, the way chaos can turn into triumph overnight. One day, Madison Beer was buried under 25 pounds of impossible beauty, afraid she'd fall, afraid the dream might slip away. The next, she was standing beneath a shower of lights, moving freely, unshackled, singing like she was weightless. What began as panic behind the curtain became the moment everyone remembered. Effortless, flawless, unforgettable. But that's the thing about perfection. It's almost never real. We see the glow, the glitter, the perfect angles, and forget the sleepless nights that built them. Somewhere behind every standing ovation is a team covered in glue and feathers, a performer hiding nerves behind a smile, and a last-minute decision that changes everything. Madison's story is a reminder of that truth, that even in a world obsessed with polish, authenticity still shines brighter. She walked off that stage not just as a performer, but as proof that sometimes the best version of beauty is the one that almost didn't happen. So here's the question. How often do we see perfection and forget the sleepless night behind it? Tell us below. Would you keep the wings or let them fly?